to election of temporary president. Our first order of business is to elect a temporary president who will preside over the nomination and election of the 2023 president vice president. Mr. Fike, as board secretary, can you please move forward with this process?
At this time, we open the elect for temporary president to chair organization meeting. Is there a nomination for temporary president?
I have a nomination. I'd like to nominate Julia Schaefer.
Second.
We don't need a second.
Fantastic.
Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, it's no objection. I'll declare nominations closed. All in favor for Julia Schaefer to be temporary president, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Julia?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Fike. I will now open the floor to nominations for the office of president. Are there any nominations?
I have a nomination. I'd like to nominate Dr. Ann Hearing.
Any other nominations? Okay. John Fiddler has nominated Dr. Ann Herring for president. Are there any other nominations for the office of president? Okay, seeing none, and if there's no objection, I declare the nominations closed. Our board policy number 005 states that elections of an officer requires the winning candidate to receive a majority vote cast by those present and voting. Since there are 7 members present, 4 votes are necessary to win. If everyone is present, cast a vote. All those in favor of Dr. Ann Herring for president, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The vote is unanimous in favor of Dr. Ann Herring, and she has been elected president. Congratulations, Dr. Ann Herring. I will now turn the meeting over to our new board president. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Schaefer. And thank you to the board for your confidence and trust in me in this position for another year. The last year has been very interesting, but it's been very successful in my opinion because we've all worked just wonderful together, and I appreciate that. I will now move forward to open the floor to nominations for the office of vice president. Are there any nominations?
I'll nominate John Fiddler.
Thank you. Ms. Schaefer has not. Mr. John Fiddler. Any other candidates? Okay. Seeing none, if there's no objection, I declare the nomination closed. All in favor for John Fiddler for vice president, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The vote is unanimous in favor of Mr. Fiddler, and he has been elected vice president. Congratulations, John. There are just a few more things we need to address before we can wrap up the organization meeting and adjourn to our special voting meeting. We have item 6A, which is signature authorization. It is recommended that the Board of School Directors authorize signatures with PNC Bank for the district's disbursement checking account for all funds as follows: President Ann Hearing, Vice President John Fiddler, Board Secretary Brian Fike, and the treasurer will be appointed at the December 19th voting meeting. Can I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. Item 7A, authorize current signatures. It is recommended that the Board of School Directors authorize current signatures to be official until elected signatures can be obtained for 2023 board officials.
Second.
We have a second motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, that was quick. At this point, that concludes our December reorganization meeting, and I declare the meeting adjourned. We'll now continue on to our Wednesday, December 7th, Exeter Township School District Special Board Voting Meeting. Mr. Fike, can you take roll call again, please?
Dr. Ann Herring,
Present.
John Fiddler,
Here.
Dr. Andrea Bantler, Dr. David Hemberger,
Here.
Jason Bell,
Here.
Timothy Morgan,
Here.
Robert Quinter, Julia Schaefer,
Here.
Allison Wilson. 7 present, 2 absent.
Thank you, Mr. Fike. We will not be amending the agenda tonight, so we'll be moving forward to the superintendent's report. Dr. Haller.
Thank you, Dr. Herring, and congratulations to you and Mr. Fiddler on your continuing on in your positions. I'd like to recognize that some of our Reichton staff are here tonight, sitting in the audience, so welcome. And with that, I'd like to share with the board and the community a couple of things that I'd like to highlight. Last week, I had an opportunity to join the Exeter alumni meeting at the request of Larry Hout. And I was so glad that I could attend. It was a great meeting, and I'm looking forward to working with them and highlighting the wonderful things that they do for the students of the Exeter Township School District. As of the result of that meeting, we discovered that there are boxes upon boxes of candid photos in the Alumni Association meeting, and Jen Breton and I went down there and started peeking through those photographs, and we stumbled upon people we know, teachers, administrators, parents, and so we have decided that it would be very fun to start posting these candidates on Exeter's Facebook page to see if anybody recognizes people. So you can be looking forward, and there many of them are not labeled. So we honestly do not know who they are. So it would be fun to find out who these individuals are, because it is certainly part of our history. Speaking of social media, we have entered into the world of TikTok. So we do have about 6 videos posted on TikTok that are also on our webpage. Some of Reichton, some of the junior high, a couple from Veterans Day. So as of right now, we have 283 followers, and that is growing. Last Friday, I had an opportunity to pop in at the junior high and visit the lunch there. It was great because I learned that it was Disco Friday, and it's part of their PBIS program, which stands for the Positive Behavior Intervention Support Program. And I've also learned that Mr. Brown has very strong DJing skills, which I think the district at some point could potentially use, as I see him in the back smiling. But I would like to highlight the work of Principal Brown and his assistant, Jen Cook, as well as the staff there, and commend them for what a nice environment it was to walk into. The students their behavior was really honestly exceptional. They were very well behaved. They walked in, they sat down, they were socializing, laughing, talking. As soon as the music came on, they started singing along, waited patiently, got their lunch, sat back down, and they were sitting there eating their lunch, kind of bebopping along to the music. So it was nice to see that, and I enjoyed it. And I would hope that if the board has an opportunity, that maybe on a Disco Friday, you might want to contact Alex and go and visit yourself and enjoy the music. And then lastly, I would like to encourage the community to please consider attending our monthly budget workshop meetings. There are meetings that we have added towards the end of every month in preparation for the budget, which is a very lengthy process. We've held 2 so far. We held the first one at the junior high, and we held the second one at the high school. And the purpose of holding them at different sites is so that we can also include a tour. And then with each meeting, there is a topic for the presentation. So on cue, Joe Way, who's in the closet, our IT director, has posted up on the screen the webpage for our budget workshop meetings. And so if you aren't able to attend, you can follow along with the process on our webpage. And you'll see that there's minutes that are included, as well as a link for the presentation that's been given. Our next meeting is this month, December 21st, and it is at Lorraine Elementary School. It'll be starting at 6 o'clock, and it will be in our school library. And again, it'll start with a tour, and then the topic of the presentation will be expenditures. So we hope to see some additional faces there to be part of the process. And with that, that concludes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Haller. Next, we would move on to public comment. No one has signed up, so we're going to move on to education. Mr. Fiddler.
Thank you, Dr. Herring. Just one item. It is recommended that the Board of School Directors approve the following list of staff conferences. Just one conference, SAP training for Taylor Curley.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
And that concludes the Education Committee items.
Thank you, Mr. Fiddler. Personnel Committee, Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Dr. Herring. We're going to start with A, job descriptions. It's recommended that the Board of School Directors approves the updated job description for the Director of Operations and the Supervisor of Operations.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, Dr. Herring, a couple things about this. As I reviewed this and the attachments that were given to us in public, there is a updated job description. However, there is no detail as to what was added or what was subtracted. So my recommendation to the board would be that we table this, move it to amend the agenda to move it to the committee of the whole where we can discuss it, and then move it to the voting meeting later in December. But I'll wait before I make that motion until there's further discussion.
Thank you. Is there any discussion on that?
I think that's fine. Because I don't think there's any context around what these changes are for.
First, you're going to need to amend the agenda to do that. Let's do it that way.
We need to table it first, correct?
Yeah,
You withdraw your motion.
right. You can either withdraw your motion now, or we can table it now. Because you actually moved to table it already?
No, I did not.
No, I didn't think so. Right. Yeah.
I'll withdraw the second then.
So you've withdrawn your motion.
Yes, I'll withdraw my motion.
Can I have a motion to amend the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Right now, we voted to amend.
Okay, all in favor to amend the agenda? Say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries.
So now just to be clear, we've amended the agenda to move this to the committee of the whole. Is that correct?
That's correct. I think that's what you had
Immediately
suggested.
following the special voting meeting.
Correct.
That's
Okay,
fine.
very good. Thank you. Okay. It is recommended the Board of School Directors approves and ratifies the following appointments. Under administrative staff, Frank Vecchio as the assistant principal of the senior high school. And just as a note, he's not being rehired as the assistant principal. He was a former Exeter employee and is now coming back into Exeter. Certified staff A and B, and support staff A and B, and food service staff A.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
It is recommended the Board of School Directors approves or ratifies the following resignations under support staff A, B, and C.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Under change of status, it is recommended the Board of School Directors approves or ratifies the following changes of status under support staff A.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Under leaves of absence, it is recommended the Board of School Directors approves or ratifies the following leaves of absence, and they are listed below.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
And finally, before I conclude, I know that Mr. Vecchio is in the audience, and I just want to congratulate him and welcome back to Exeter, and we're looking forward to having you.
If I can say, anytime your name is mentioned to a kid in the school, they all go crazy. Even my kid, I don't think he was even in your class, and he's like, oh, that guy's great. So we're excited to have you back. Awesome.
That concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morgan. Okay. Next is public comments. We didn't have anyone that signed up. Would anyone on the board like to be heard at this point? Okay, that concludes our December special voting meeting. Hearing no objections, I declare this meeting adjourned. Would everybody like to take a 5-minute break, or do we want to carry on?
I'm okay with pushing one.
You good? Okay. All right, then let's move on to our Wednesday, December 7th, 2022 Exeter Township School District Committee of a Whole meeting. Mr. Fite, can you take roll call?
Dr. Ann Herring,
Present.
John Fidler,
Here.
Dr. Andrea Bantler, Dr. David Hemberger,
Here.
Jason Mill,
Here.
Timothy Morgan,
Here.
Robert Quinter, Julia Schaefer,
Here.
Allison Wilson, 7 present.
Thank you. The meeting minutes are attached. Does anybody have any changes or discussion they would like to make regarding the meeting minutes for the special voting meeting and committee of a whole meeting dated November 2nd, as well as the board voting meeting dated November 21st? Everyone's looking at Jason. No. Thank you. Okay. We will not be amending the agenda. Or will we? Yes, we will be.
Yeah,
Okay,
you
so
add
we
that.
will be amending tonight's agenda to include the job descriptions.
Need to vote to amend.
Okay. That's a motion. Second. We have a second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, school board meetings. Let's see. Sorry. Okay. We will be recommending that the school board of directors set board meeting dates for 2023 as per the attached list.
Second.
It's just for information, John. But thank you. I appreciate your encouragement there.
We're really jumping on the subjects now.
I'll put that one in the bank.
Okay, you do that. I just wanted to add to that, if I may, that for the 2023 meeting dates, I'm open to reverting back to our traditional Tuesday meetings on the first and third Tuesday of the month, since the temporary educational conflict with one of our members is now over. One thing that has been noted by a community member, though, is that Tuesday, May 16th is the date of the primaries. So if we can change that, no, if we want to change it to the Monday before, the Wednesday after. Okay. Anybody want to make any comments? No? Okay.
Quickly pull it up, but the June, I prefer having the voting meeting as late as possible because it's budget and time to vote. Okay, so it is okay.
Okay, wonderful. We'll move on to Education Committee, Mr. Fidler.
Thank you, Dr. Hearing. Several items, most of which we will move ahead to the voting meeting. Conference requests first. There are 3 of those there. Field trips will not require, field trips within the 60-mile radius will not require board action. Walton Creek Elementary School life skills and MDS classes, and the senior high school science Olympiad team for early next year. We have a Item C, Senior High School Soaring Eagle, Tom Campbell. I don't think that requires board action this time. Mr. Campbell, would you be able to brief the board and the public on those two items, particularly on the minor changes and the changes of notes? Thanks.
Thank you. Actually, right that I just want to publicly say that I'm thrilled that Frank is back at Exeter, and I just told the staff the other day at our meeting that it was almost a year to the date that I said he was always welcome here, and once an Eagle, always an Eagle. So I'm really looking forward to having you back and working even more closely with you. So the Soaring Eagle changes for next year, we left. Those are really just more colorful and typographical updates. The other ones to note, we've made some changes to the transcript designations. That was to clear up some confusion that had emerged out of the use of the RAC designation. We've added some language in there about Act 158, the state graduation requirement. In social studies, there was a resequencing this past year. We piloted AP Human Geography and built a new global studies course, and we've learned a lot from that process. We are going to put the AP Human Geography on hold right now as we build out the prerequisite skills that are going to be important for those kids to be even more successful in that class. And we're going to continue to have 2 levels of social studies for our 9th graders as they transition from the junior high to the high school. The global studies course has been very successful. The teachers, I want to give credit to the teachers who built both of those courses this year. The teams for global studies with Ms. Rakowski, Ms. Lockhart, Ms. Fennick have been working really hard to take the same standards but make that a much more relevant course. That was the world history course. And then the AP Human Geography program with Ms. Fennick and Ms. Schubeck has also been very diligent in having to understand what we need to build out for that course to be reinstituted. The American Cultures is going to be reactivated. That was on hold this year as we resequenced, and so next year we will have that back on for our students so that all students will have gotten American cultures throughout their high school career. And then the World History course is being replaced with the Global Studies again to make a much more relevant course. World Language, we're continuing to phase out Latin. That's been a long-term decline, and I think the benefit of that is that we've had a more robust subscription to our other language courses. Tech Ed has been responsive to opportunities for kids, and that they're taking that Medal 3 and turning that into more of an independence and mentor program. So it allows more students access to that, and it gives them the opportunity to be teaching younger students. So I think it's a nice add. FCS, we're making an adjustment to the Life 101. For a couple years, that was open to 9th graders, and that has not been the best selection for them. I think the maturity of the 10th, 11th, and 12th graders has made that course more successful for those upper grades. And we also have a lot of other options for our 9th graders for electives. Art is doing something similar to Tech Ed and adding a layered course. That ceramics has been a very successful one, and we're giving more opportunities for kids to continue that study without adding another course per se. And in the music department, very similar. We're layering in music production so that kids can continue that study without adding additional sections to the schedule. And then we're splitting out the music theory so that we're having some more prerequisite introduction to that so our kids can be more successful in the AP music theory as they progress into that next level.
Two questions actually for the ceramics. Do we do any partnering with the Goggle Works?
Don't know that there's direct partnering with their studio, but we do have students that present a lot of their work over at the competitions and shows that are hosted by the Goggle Works.
Next one, remove the RAC designation. Could you refresh me on that? And I'm interested in that because I taught there for a few years. What does that mean, remove the RAC designation?
So last 2 years, there was an effort to try to differentiate some of the AP and honors level courses when those students took that for dual enrollment. that dual enrollment still exists and is still a very robust program, and we want to support that. But by putting that on there, that created confusion. And the transcript really needs to be a means of communication to colleges that are taking a look at that and trying to understand what our students had. It was also superfluous because the students who are taking those dual enrollment classes, whether they're an honors level course or an AP level course, are also submitting those transcripts along with their high school transcript. So colleges were looking at that and were like, all right, what's this rack? And really what we needed to give them was a clear, commonly understood language, which was honors this or AP that. So we're moving back to that more traditional means of communication.
Thanks, Tom.
Dr. Campbell, Mr. Campbell, sorry. When you look at this and you look at the next year, do you guys look at enrollment for these courses, and what is a minimum enrollment? Do we have courses that have two students in it, or what does that look like?
No, not that. But we do, and that is part of what we are trying to plan for when we're looking at the offerings. We don't know what that enrollment's going to be until students actually sign up. So we're trying to make some best guesses. So for an example of that FCS course, the Life 101, we did run numbers for several years to try to figure out what the effect of that change may be. There's other courses like the Ceramics 2 and that music production. The reason I'm not so concerned about that is that those are actually layered. Those teachers are teaching those courses more as a studio course, so those courses are meeting concurrently with other courses. So the numbers, although if you may look on paper, that Ceramics 2 class may have 5 students in it, but it's also meeting at the same time that Ceramics 1 is, and that Ceramics 1 has 15 kids in it. So the classroom is full, the use of our teaching resources is being utilized efficiently because we don't have space or capacity to offer classes that only have a handful of kids in it.
Can we do that audit for all of the course selections in the entire high school?
So that is more of a process in the scheduling. So in January, we'll do presentations to the classes for their course selection, and then students will then make those course selections over the next few weeks. Middle of February, we will be taking a look at all of those numbers and making some judgments about how many sections need to be offered. And when there's really low enrollment, then we need to take a look at should this course be run. And if we do pull a course because of a low subscription, we then go back to those students and say, look, you need to pick something else. Or we will consult the alternative courses that they've listed. So what you're asking really isn't a function of the Soaring Eagle process as much as it is scheduling, but through our experiences with scheduling, we make some best guesses about what's going to work and what's not.
Thanks for the clarification.
And Tom, I guess the other item is the actual profile, if you will, of the Soaring Eagle program. Is there anything that stands out here that you would like to emphasize?
No, the changes of note were on that summary. Everything else is, well, it's all encompassed there, whether it's a minor change or a major change.
Other questions from the board?
Thank you.
Yep. The next two items on the agenda, item D, agreement with GHR Education. I guess Mrs. Harris is not here. Do you have any additional information or clarifying information?
Sure. So we would like to enter into an agreement with this company that provides nursing services as well as paraprofessionals. From time to time, we do subcontract out different types of services, especially when we are unable to fill those positions ourselves. And at this time, it is very challenging to find certified nurses and also paraprofessionals to work with special education students. But we're required to do so to support students in the classroom. So that's why we would like to bring this company in to help us with that need.
Have we worked with these folks before?
I am not, I don't believe that we have. I believe that this is a new company. In the process of trying to make sure that we were staffed Mrs. Harris did reach out to other companies. We have reached out to other companies for staffing needs, and we do work in particular with a number of nursing company types, like Aviana, and there's some other ones. But this particular organization has assured us that they will be able to fulfill our staffing needs.
Thank you.
Dr. Haller, this says that it is a staffing agreement. However, there is no attachment that would suggest what the hourly rates are for the nursing and the paraprofessionals on this.
We can, is it,
Good on there?
okay.
All right, I take that back. I'm sorry.
And this is just when we can't fill, so we will always attempt to fill ourselves, and these positions are posted, but we needed to have a backup plan in order to meet the needs of students.
Thanks. Other questions from the board? All right, thank you. And finally, the last item, agreement with Elwyn Opportunity School for a special education student. Cost of $481 a day, or a total of $55,315. And I'll ask that be moved ahead to the voting. Questions or comments? And that concludes my report, Dr.
Thank you, Mr. Fiddler. Finance, Facilities, and Audit Committee, Mr. Mel.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Hearing. The only item I have on my agenda here is for the Gable Associates proposal. Gable Associates is actually the company that's branded under the PSBA Energy Solutions program that we had discussed at the last special finance committee meeting. And Mr. Fike was tasked with reaching out to them to get some more information to present to the board. So any discussion?
Well, I have questions. It's a little confusing. What exactly will they be doing, and how do they relate? Wasn't there a company that was part of the team that was proposing the solar program? There was some Quandrel or something like that. Do they replace? Is this going to replace Quandrel?
Correct. Quandel was the company that was working with our HVAC replacements at the junior high.
There are engineers for the district under the HVAC programs, but we asked them to try to help on the solar piece, but they're not solar experts, and they're basically construction people and HVAC people.
So,
but they did that out of the kindness of their hearts. But
yeah, we were getting free consultation with them, but it wasn't to the level that we wanted. So that's why we decided to talk to this firm.
And we also, I think the board wanted a complete independent that was not a contractor, was not a solar provider, or someone that was outside the box that wouldn't sway one way or the other.
In a nut, what would these people do for us?
If you look at task 1, they'll review the information provided to this district, including the final layout, draft agreement, cash flow model for Greenworks development and solar energy. I also give them the other contracts that I had vetted before that. They'll gather and analyze the utility bills, tariff classifications. They'll basically rerun the whole cash flow and see if what Greenworks was saying was correct. They'll also generate a price to compare. They'll also give you a presentation on whether it might be better to build it yourself or go with the power purchase agreement or a lease. There's other things out there, lease agreements that cost money. And I said I looked at the cheapest way for the district to get in there, but there's other options. And they will generate an ownership model, analyze the economic benefits, cost ownership of a light and solar array, which include accounting for latest investment. They'll also include the recent Inflation Reduction Act, which wasn't there when we started this whole project a year ago. And just, give us a proposal or PowerPoint to present to the board 4 to 6 weeks after we accept their agreement.
There's definitely been a number of changes, especially with the Inflation Reduction Act. The one thing that we we had actually noticed was that I think it was the 30% direct payment. We were originally going into the Reworks proposal. There was no way to get those rebates directly to a nonprofit entity. Looks like that has changed with some legislation starting in 2023. So there's some additional options out there that we, for a company like this, we'd like to pursue. It's essentially somebody going in and that is familiar with energy and energy contracts to be able to advise the board, to be an independent body. They're not selling product themselves. They are tasked with getting paid for and looking at proposals that we've received from energy companies and giving us their recommendation.
Well, didn't we already get this from Brubeck, and it didn't cost us anything?
I don't know if I don't know the level of consultation that we received from that. To honestly say that covered everything, because that again was not vetted through any type of independent source, other than we did have some questions answered.
Quite a few.
I don't disagree that we had quite a few questions answered, but we didn't ask them to do that. They did that on their own free will. We didn't vet whether or not what they said was accurate or not, and we really didn't have any background on what their self-interest was in doing so.
Well, then let me ask the devil's advocate question. Why didn't we bring Gable in before? Did we not know about Gable and companies like this? We basically heard from a salesman for 6 months. Why didn't we bring in Gable 5 months ago to say, would you take a look at this?
Truthfully, you heard from a salesman for 6 months. I've been working on this for a year and heard from 5 different companies and vetted down to one, which I presented to the board. The board, I'm not sure if they didn't trust my numbers or whatever, but you wanted a second opinion, and I have no problem with that. But, I've been working on this for a year, and I have vetted everyone else. Your question, I think, really came down to, is the electric grid going to be there? Is this the best way to go? Either power purchase agreement or lease agreement. I told you I didn't look at lease agreements. I didn't look at building ourselves, because I was looking at strictly a budget number and not putting any money out of our pocket to get it moving.
Okay.
Mr. Pike, first of all, I think that you did a great job. I think that the issue here is whether or not we felt as though, at least in my mind, we were properly negotiating with the service that we were getting from them. In regards to Gable, I do have some concerns about the schedule, because there's really not a lot of depth of how. I mean, we really don't understand how we're being charged this hourly fee, how many hours it's going to take them. Are they going to have a principal level do it, or are they going to have an associate level do it? I think there's a lot of questions that need to be answered about this. My second question is, I never like looking at just one contract. I mean, I understand this was, I believe, through PSBA, but I'm sure that there are other third-party that we can use, that we can look at least as a comparison to see if we are going to go this route, if this is the best deal. And finally, I think that we all have a lot on our plate between now and June to get through a budget. And I think that budget is going to be all hands on deck. And I think that in order for us to make sure that we do that properly, that we should put a hold on this until we get through, passing a budget. And furthermore, if we're going to be passing a budget and we're going to be including this kind of an expense, that should be incorporated into next year's budget, when we can kind of start fresh with clean eyes and we all feel that we are moving in the same direction and have the time to do so. I'd hate to see us bring these people in, spend this kind of money, and really not be able to do anything with it because we're all tied up trying to figure out that budget for next year. Thank you.
Just answer one of the.
Did we contact Lubeck to see if they were interested in providing the same service?
I don't think we did. Obviously, I think there was definitely an email that we received after reading an article in the paper, but from my understanding, that report came in from somebody that was a construction consultant. I don't know where the material or information came from, but I'm sure that's an option we can reach out to. I think PSBA was the initial company that we wanted to reach out to for consultation because they were obviously being associated with PSBA, but in addition, they were offering a free consultation to even start with versus some other company where we don't know what kind of fees we're going to have to pay up front to even engage in further discussion to get to that.
Yeah, but the website did say it was a free energy assessment, so I think that's why we decided to go that route, so we can get the energy assessment, explore alternatives, and then also have them look at the contracts. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So my understanding coming out of the last finance committee meeting, I don't think I necessarily, at least in my opinion, want to pay a firm to just rehash the same proposal that we've been rehashing for the past few months. It was already voted down. I don't know if there's going to be enough context there or enough research there to really change any minds of what comes out of that. I think probably from my end, I would like to see something more over-encompassing. First, to see if solar just even makes sense to even do, and if it does, then go down the route of engaging in more proposals. But I'm in agreement with Mr. Morgan. I do think that we have a lot of things to look at for the budget. We're going through buildings. We're seeing a lot of things that need improvement. I believe, to me, those take priority over any additional potential debt we may incur with looking at this type of energy system. So I also feel like we need to put the brakes on it for a little bit.
I'd just like to make a few comments. First of all, your question in terms of Tim, about costs. The economic benefit analysis that we're talking about here is limited. So the costs associated with those additional consulting support is not included in this in what we're looking at. We're looking at that tier 1 or that task 1 level analysis, which is limited to $5,000, and that $5,000 kind of gives us, I think, what Brian was alluding to, an opportunity for us to take a look at the proposal as it was submitted. And the savings apparently over time, $30 million, does that hold up under the scrutiny of their assessment? They use numbers as well as the contractor would. I think this would give us a chance to really understand and answer some of the questions that you have, I think, Jason, which is, does it make sense for us to move forward with something like this, or do we put this to bed and wait for another time? I think this would be an opportunity for us, at least those of the board. It was a close vote, a 5-4 vote, from what I recall. And I think some of the people who were uncomfortable moving forward at that time didn't feel like we had this kind of analysis to be able to make that decision. So that's one of the primary reasons why it really didn't go forward at that time, I believe. So I would like to see this move forward because it won't cost us any effort on our part. That 4 to 6 week period of time is all that work is done by them in their assessment. And then we have a better sense in terms of whether or not we need to kind of think about this or plan for this in the future. I don't really have the sense that this is going to interfere with the rest of the work that we do. I don't see how this is going to interfere with budget preparations in any way, because I think this whole concept is looking ahead, looking at the future. And does it make sense? We'll find out at the end of the assessment. That's my sense of this.
So if we gave them 3 contracts that we had, would they be incorporated in this 5,000?
They'll only do, this 5,000 was really was to look at Greenworks and to say, does Greenworks, does it work? Do their numbers pan out? Could we or will we save or yield $30 million over that 40-year period of time? Is that a realistic number? Does that make sense? I think they'll be able to kind of look at this. And from what I'm reading through here, they've got some, really great, what they've done before and the types of proposals that they do. The fact that they work for us on our behalf with no vested interest in any solar project whatsoever, I think is really the kind of thing that I think we were looking for when we had our discussions about this before.
And is the assumption that they will then redline that contract to say this is, if you did this, this would meet the standards that we feel is a good deal for you? Or are they just going to look at it and say, this isn't good, in which we're in the same place we are right
Yeah,
now?
I mean, they're going to put together, as Brian said, they're going to put together a slide deck, and it's going to have their overall analysis, and I'm sure we can ask as many questions as we want to. They'll probably present it. I'm assuming that part of that is presenting it to the board at some point. So,
Why are we analyzing a deal we've already turned down with the speed in which alternative energies are being developed? Why do we want to look backwards and spend $5,000 when we can go forward and look for alternative proposals and have them analyzed at that time instead of spending $5,000 to look at what has been voted down?
Well, I think Mr. Fike's, original purpose for doing this was basically financial. I mean, the money that we would save annually on what appears to be escalating energy costs over time would be offset by solar systems. So that was and that's not uncommon throughout the country right now. I mean, we're seeing it. We've seen articles and
the common
information all
thing
over.
throughout the country is that our federal government has gone into proposals which is costing us money and which we are not prepared to fulfill yet. We're going to have jobs for the oil workers. Well, that's 10 years away, and I got friends that are going broke in Mississippi because they canceled the oil things. We're talking about a dynamic development, and so far as looking at Green Tree, I've got no interest in looking at Green Tree because we've handled it, we spent a lot of time on it, and it was found wanting. So I would rather have a new proposal which these people can then look at and analyze, and it's something that's working toward the future instead of looking, well, why did we throw that away? I know Brian spent a lot of time on it, but that doesn't mean that we got to look backwards again.
Well, I think, just to respond to that, and I understand what you're saying. I think there may be some lack of confidence with Greenworks, in terms of the proposal that they provided. But I thought that was really what this whole idea was all about, and I thought we agreed, as a team, that we should be trying to find somebody, an organization that would be able to provide us with an impartial, expert opinion in terms of whether or not a project like this makes financial sense for the school district, or whether it would be a risk for the school district in some ways. If they were to come in here and say, they are spot on, and you are destined to save $30 million over a 40-year period of time, I think we're turning our back on something really important for our community and for the school district. In terms of this kind of savings, the kind of savings that I think Mr. Fike was hoping that we'd find, because, quite frankly, we have a budget coming up. We have to be able to kind of prove to the taxpayers that we're trying to find ways to save money, and this is an excellent opportunity.
I understand the idea of $30 million, but it was also agreed to by Greenworks that in the close horizon, there are developments that are coming forward which will be a lot more palatable so far as the amount of land used, a lot more rewarding so far as the return on any investment or the return on any contracts we have. I think we're looking at something, by looking back at it, I'm not interested in looking back because this whole area is so dynamic. I want to spend the $5,000 on looking at the next proposal we get, and we should get another proposal. I'm not against that, but I don't see that looking back is that I want the newest technology, I want the most efficient system, and I want the system that gives us the best service and the most return on any investment or any building that's accomplished.
And, you know, from my end, I think the issue, maybe not necessarily just with Greenworks, but solar PPAs in general and those types of agreements, I stated before when we voted on it, I don't have clear confidence that we're not entering into a risky agreement. There's not protections in place. There's also a lot of speculation that goes into those agreements, such as the SREC credit amounts that we're going to get. And obviously, the future energy prices are highly speculative. So I don't know what a consultant even is going to do when they come in and just look at that one agreement. It's going to be speculation just from their end as well. Now, I don't. They may be able to tell us what their sources are of where they're getting those future electric costs, but it's pure speculation of what that's going to be in the next 30, 40 years. And I'm just not convinced that it's going to have the long-term savings that's presented there. And yes, it may provide stabilization as an alternative benefit, but in an ideal world, that's what we have reserves for. The reserves are there to handle those swings in energy prices and any differences year to year in budgets. So, yeah, to me, I would prefer to put it to bed for at least temporarily for right now.
Is there something that they could do, like take Greenworks out, the fact that we even have a proposal in hand from them? Is there something that this organization can provide us that can give us some kind of enlightenment whether we should continue to look down this road? I mean, clearly they do this for a living, right? I mean, so this organization must see these proposals all over the place, right? So what if we didn't give them a proposal? What are our options if they just did an energy assessment to say, hey, listen, based on where you are, we understand you're trying to save money. This is a platform that we believe is a good investment of your time to try to find an agreement. Maybe they're going to maybe they're going to say it's not solar. Maybe it's some kind of other energy savings opportunity. But I think we're pigeonholing ourselves to one agreement, and I think for me, Dr. Hemberg, I think that's my issue, is that I don't want them to have blinders on to Greenworks, and that was my initial thought as well. I'm not opposed if in the future we bring Greenworks back into the conversation, but what can these guys do to give us information that I think, to Mr. Mell's point, that are we even doing the right thing and looking down this road?
Yeah, can I just comment on what you just said, Tim? I don't think that's a bad idea or a bad thought. I mean, whether they use the Greenworks proposal as sort of a template or just something that they could allude to and whether or not it makes sense, but then kind of look at the wide scope of possible energy savings opportunities. I mean, if you look at this proposal, and you see the kind of work that they do, it's exactly what you're talking about. They're looking at, in general, energy solutions, and they're not necessarily focused, they don't have to focus on solar. So, I mean, we could probably, I would imagine we could redraft something like this and ask them for a more of a generic assessment of energy, and understanding that this was one of the proposals. They could probably look at that pretty quickly and determine, what that's all about, but also kind of give us some direction in terms of where we should go.
I would be in favor of the direction of expert advice on the direction we should go. I would be in favor if they provide me with their expert and learned opinion on what is in the works right now. Can we see this? It was basically 100% improvement, went from 20 to 50% efficiency on recovery from the energy that it is. That's 100% improvement. Is that going to be in the next year? Is it going to be in 2 years? Give me an analysis of the situation, and I'd be in favor of spending the money. But to go over Greenworks again, I think it's a waste of money.
And again, the whole reason we reached out to this firm was because with PSBA, they offered a free energy assessment. And that's what I thought we were going to be engaging with them with to start this process off. So if that is an option, we can go back to them and say that we'd like to start at square one and look at the overall energy picture.
I like free.
Yeah, and I think that's what we had discussed when we met about this, was getting the energy assessment first and then moving forward with the recommendations. I know it's just a small scope of what they do, but it gives us a starting point. Solar is not the only energy source we can tap into.
I'd be comfortable taking this off the agenda and kind of revisiting this, the concept that we're talking about of the energy assessment, and with the understanding that it's consistent with the offer that was made previously that it would be free. Yeah, I think that's a good starting point. I agree.
Any other discussion?
We're not going to move it forward then. Is that the understanding?
Can we at
my
least move
understanding.
forward a vote to do a energy assessment?
Yeah, I don't think we need a formal vote for that.
Okay.
To have Brian reach back out to them and ask for that.
And Mr. Beck, does that go through PSBA directly? Is that
Well,
how
I
you
contacted PSBA and they
And
had
then- okay.
PSBA or that cable contact me. So,
Dr. Hearing, that is it for my committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Mel. Personnel Committee, Mr. Morgan.
I'm getting there. Give me a second. Okay, looks like we have some course requests that are available for your viewing, and then we had amended the agenda to move the job descriptions over, and I wonder if Dr. Heller, you could give us some insight and just as a note, maybe in the future when we do these things, I don't know if we can maybe red line or yellow line or green line, so that this way we can see, what's being taken off of the job description and what's being added to the job description, just to give a little more clarity.
We will be very happy to do that in the future. I actually think it might be best to have either Brian or Diane speak to the changes of the.
actually, if I can, I see Steve's back there. Steve, if you can come up, because you and I discussed this about trying to assign the management responsibilities of our facilities. The way everything was set up there, the existing, Steve's in charge of everything, which is 37 employees, and the supervisor's in charge of 5 employees. So we wanted to make things a little bit differently, and also put in the description the supervisor would work like 1 evening a week, so we have someone also covering the second shift. Do you want to add anything to that, or Diane?
I don't really have anything to add. This was a revamp of the department. It's actually with the addition of the grounds, which is one of the reasons why we moved and redid the job descriptions. There was an addition of adding grounds work and snow removal and the processes for which that takes place into my realm of operations from where they were. So it's actually 45 employees and myself and the manager. The current manager's job just incorporated 5 employee supervision, which was basically the maintenance people. His scope now will change to handling custodial responsibilities, maintenance responsibilities, and grounds responsibilities, which were not in his job description previously. And the grounds portion was not in my job description. So both job descriptions were modified to handle that addition, and then also provide coverage for me when I'm not around, someone to answer the phone and handle emergencies, whatnot. That's why the job descriptions were modified from where they were to where they are now.
And to also take out call-out weekends.
That's correct.
And when he said grounds, grounds was moved to athletics for mowing grass, but that stops in November and starts again in April, so all those people then come back under facilities. So we needed to have we changed the athletics or the grounds for mowing, but we never changed anything for winter people and who controls those employees during the winter, what they do.
So this is more handling the grounds from an aspect of it's not just cutting grass. I mean, it's the maintaining of all the equipment for the district, all the snow removal equipment, the vehicles, lining parking lots, painting curbs, taking care of mulch, removal of trees, all the aspects that go along with grounds, maintaining stuff at the stadium, all the events that are outside. So those things are now incorporated into this department, where before they were in the athletics department, which is a burden on the athletics department.
And are they incorporated in the job description of the athletics department right now? And if so, do we need to change the job description?
I believe that when this change was initially made, there was something to the effect of cutting grass in there, but it didn't really expand beyond that. But we will need to look at that, and that was part of the issue and the discrepancy, that there was a lapse in some of the items because they really didn't fall under anyone.
Thanks for the explanation. Again, it was certainly not that we didn't think that it was correct, just that we just needed to understand what was changing in order for us to vote on it.
And it just makes it easier for, if things would change in the future. Also, it gives a more comprehensive look of the department operation, what it is as a whole, and gives better guidance for the manager to understand what his responsibilities are, or hers, in this case.
Makes sense. Thanks.
Can I just make a comment about just the process? Again, I think it would be a good idea going forward when we have those kind of changes, that the strikeout bold language would be good to help the board understand, when something changes like that, for future documents.
And we will review Mr. Lagat's job description and make the necessary changes to align with the grass cutting, and then put that on the committee of the whole meeting for January with the changes, so that way we can start that process fresh.
Is that everything sorted?
That is. I do have a question. Can we go back for a second to curriculum? Because if that's okay, do you mind if we do that real quick? I hate to go backwards. Is that okay? Yeah. I'm just pulling up my report. I had asked about that staffing for nursing and para, and that contract is not public content. However, I think that most of the time those contracts are public content because there's nothing within personnel in there. So just wondering if that's not something we normally do, or if that was just a miss on our part.
I'll have to check on that, but if it can be made public, we will make it.
Okay.
But I will have a response for the next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. Policy Committee, Dr. Hamburger.
Thanks, Dr. Hearing. Just two policies on the agenda for the next voting meeting. Policy 805 for second reading is school security personnel. And we've had conversations with this already at the committee of the whole. The changes were necessary based upon some language, at the state level that required school districts to continue to have folks who are assigned as the safety and security coordinator for the school district being an actual employee of the school district and not a contracted employee. And then admission of students, 202. If you recall, the reason that change was necessary was because we had ended the process of early admission to kindergarten and first grade during the COVID era, and now reinstating that practice now with some additional language to direct parents to write letters and request the assessment by the school district when they felt that their child would be a candidate for early admission to kindergarten. So those are the two. Policies. Or any questions or comments about those two? If not, that's all for my report.
Thank you, Dr. Hamburger.
Thank you.
If we can make a notation in the record that Board Member Allison Wilson joined us at the table at 6:50. Next would be public comments, and I don't believe anybody signed up. So from there, we will be going to move forward the following items toward December voting agenda. The meeting minutes, item 4A for C, D, and E. Item 6A, course requests as well as the job descriptions. Item 7A. Okay, and at this point, are there any board members that would like to be heard?
Dr. Heron, could we just have just a real quick assessment of where we are with the transportation facility? Haven't heard much on that lately, and I just wondered what the
I'll
timeline
ask Steve to come up, but I think we're still looking at the second week of January. We're still waiting for the transformer, which is supposed to be in 2 weeks or a week. Go ahead, Steve. But we do have the base code. I think they're doing the final code this coming week.
So where we're currently at is the wearing codes are down across, and it's safe to drive on at this point. We're in the process of finishing the electrical work. The vault and conduit pools should be starting on the 14th with completion by the end of December. We are a little bit behind. We ran into a small issue with our electrical vault placement. It caused us a delay for 2 weeks or so until that portion was completed. We wanted to have some additional testing done of the ground there just to make sure that we knew what we were dealing with going in here, so it slowed us down a little bit. I would say substantial completion is still 90% by mid-January. After that, you get into a few weeks of you need to have occupancy inspections and final inspections of the facility, and then there'll be about a 2 to 3 week period also going on at that time where we'll do the final work inside, installing the pit, the lift, bus wash material, coating the floors, doing final preparations. We should have substantial completion, I would say by mid-February, and then you're looking at possible move-in in March or April, which is all we're ahead of schedule, basically. I would think, though, we will probably not do the final coating and lining of the parking lots until probably March or April when asphalt plants open back up, but that won't stop us from moving in. We can always move the buses for a day. So we should be on target to be open by March or mid-March at the latest.
Just in addition to that, I think last time we talked, you guys were preparing for I think it was the snow brush for the roof and de-icing policies, and I'm sure that Dr. Heller's looking forward to her first snow day announcement.
Literally, no one's allowed to say it. No one's allowed to talk about snow.
No, it's not a fun time. The gantry we currently have is located at the high school in the parking lot over there. That's where we have everything. We probably won't end up moving that until March. We'll just use it from there for this year and then move everything back over after everything's complete. But we have looked at placement. Right now we're in the process basically of getting everything tuned up inside and having electrical work done. But I don't see any foreseeable thing that's going to slow us down.
The above ground tanks are in now, right?
Yeah, both above ground tanks are in. There's nothing in them currently.
Until we get occupancy, right?
Until we get occupancy. It's all hooked up. We're just waiting for the permanent electrical feed to come in, which should be completed by the end of the month. And then we can apply for our permits and we'll be good to go. It's a nice looking building. It should be a lot more viable for our future use.
Looking forward to a tour at some point.
We can absolutely make sure that happens.
Get in there.
We
should
do
be there
have
for the grand opening.
April board meeting, budget meeting there, I think.
Could absolutely do that. Thank you.
Kind of along the same lines as the transportation center, obviously historically when we've built new facilities, we've also gone through a naming process. I don't know if that's been given any consideration. I brought this up actually to Dr. Hearing a few months back, but it was a little premature at the time. But I don't know if there's any consideration to doing a survey to the community and entertaining that idea.
Sure, we can certainly explore that idea. I guess because that building was not named previously, to my knowledge, it just was the bus garage. I didn't know if that's a road we wanted to go down.
Sure. I have just one thing. When we originally talked about the board dates earlier this meeting, it was mentioned about June 27th for the budget, to make sure we can get that budget approved. Is it our plan to be able to go to vote with budget at the May meeting? The reason I'm asking is because, we don't want to put ourselves as a board in a situation where if the budget did not get voted, that we wouldn't have time to get a new budget approved.
By law, you have to vote a preliminary final budget 20 days before you vote on the final budget. And you have to advertise it for 20 days before, but you have to vote for the preliminary final for me to advertise. So in May, you're going to have to basically adopt the budget, but it can still change for your final voting. But it has to be advertised for the public.
So in May, if that budget got voted down, we'd still be able to re-vote that budget in June. Is that correct?
You'd have to have a meeting at least 20 days before, so it's available to the public before you vote on the final.
You'd have special meetings.
Yeah.
We were that situation.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm asking is, are we planning for that, or are we going to put ourselves in a situation where if the budget doesn't get voted, we don't have the time to get a budget voted?
Yeah, because if we have the meeting on the 27th, we don't have time to re-advertise again before
Correct.
July 1st.
Exactly. All right. I just think it's something we should consider. I mean, not just this year, but I mean every year, because there's always the chance that a budget does not pass a vote, and then we need 20 more days with the preliminary budget before you vote again.
Oh, no, you don't need 20 more days. You only need to advertise it once. You can make changes to that budget. You don't need to re-advertise every time you make a change. But you do need probably 3 days for advertising. And the reason I wanted it last, because last year, I guess, the state's supposed to adopt the budget by June 30th. Last year, I think we called it June 38th, because it's July 8th they finally adopted their budget. So the later we adopt our budget, the more sure we might have a state budget to know what their revenue is going to be.
Can we just make sure before the voting meeting, when we look at those dates, that it gives us time, if the budget does not pass, that it gives us time to advertise and re-vote for that budget?
What you really need to do is be looking at your May dates for.
Understood. Absolutely.
Right. So that if you find yourselves in a position where you need to build in time to advertise, one or more special meetings to reconsider your preliminary, so that you can get the preliminary approved before 20 days before your June meeting.
Right. Exactly. But I just think it's something that we should consider as we're looking at those dates. Otherwise, it's going to be falling us having to have a special voting meeting in between. That's it. Thank you.
Okay, the only thing I wanted to mention is that I'll be looking at the board committees. I'll be adding people onto the main committee so that we always have 4 people on each committee. So if anyone's interested in sitting on one of the other committees that are there, just give me a call, let me know, and then I'll give that to the superintendent. If there's nothing else, we can adjourn. Our next meeting will be Monday, December 19th for our voting meeting. Have a good evening.